Hi everyone, I'm Webster with SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and thank you so much for tuning in to watch another one of our Conversations at Home videos today. Before we jump into today's panel, I want to continue reminding everyone watching these that as a nonprofit, we're continuing to raise money for our COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund. This is working to support SAG-AFTRA members and actors who are out of work with all of the film and television productions still being closed right now. So please check out the details below this video and consider supporting if you're able to in any way. Today we're here to talk about the wonderful Daily Show, which has recently gone remote, and we're incredibly fortunate to be joined by the entire team of Daily Show correspondents, including Desi, Lydic, Roy Wood Jr., Ronny, Chieng, Dulcé, Sloan, Michael Kosta, and Jaboukie Young White. Thanks so much for jumping in and joining us. And I feel like you guys have been living your lives on Zoom in public through the show. How has that really shifted the way that you're planning and putting a lot of the pieces that you do together versus when you were in person in the studio in production meetings together in person?
It's definitely different. It has, there are definitely a lot of changes. I think a lot of us miss being able to pop into each other's offices and being like, hey, I've got an idea. Do you want to go sit and think about this thing for a little bit? We don't really get to do that. But I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we are all really grateful to have jobs right now. We know how rare that is. We're one of the few shows that have been able to stay in production. And the way that the show was able to really, really quickly and efficiently be able to figure out in all departments how to do this from home. We were the first late night show to come back on linear. And then within like a month, we were able to expand the shows to 45 minutes. So it's been pretty remarkable to watch the way everyone has been so dedicated to make this happen. In a weird way, we kind of get to see each other a lot more now. We have a lot more chats, the correspondents together, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And just from a logistical standpoint, when you're filming pieces, like you recently did that great piece about asking Canada to invade us all together, when you're doing a piece like that, are you all jumping into something like Zoom and filming that together? Or are you filming kind of your individual pieces and then the post-production team are really editing that together?
That's something that we've been doing together. For like me and Kosta recently just did a piece together that was basically us and a director in one Zoom call, just sort of doing takes, which is kind of nice. It's kind of like doing a self-tape. Like you get to do it as many times until like you feel like it's right. Whereas a lot of the times in the studio, it's like you get that one take and that's it. So yeah, I feel like the process has been like kind of tweaked, but for the most part, it's been pretty seamless.
With the Invade Canada, I think we had like a 15-minute, 20-minute window for each of us. So you get a text message that says, hey, between 2 and 2:20, you better make sure your house is quiet. You better make sure you've had lunch. You better have taken a shower by then. I don't know about you guys, but lots of times that text determines that I'll be showering today. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm on the show.
All of us.
I got to shower. And once I shower, then all the correspondents have to shower. That's just an old
It's a rule. It's in his contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really sure dictates the nap time of my child. That's for sure.
No, it really speaks to the resourcefulness of the show because I remember when everything was when the pandemic was first happening, within a week, the Daily Show figured out protocols for like how to film online, what we're going to do. There's an editing team editing it. There's like executive kind of oversight. So it shifted to remotely really quickly for something that needs to be made every single day, or almost every single day. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's wildly impressive how quickly you guys shifted. And I wanted to talk a little bit about when you first all came onto the show, because for you, Ronny, Desi, and Roy, you were joining right at the same time that Trevor was taking over the show. And so I was interested in what some of the conversations were that you all had at that point about where you really saw the voice and identity of the show going, and then how that really shifted once the political landscape rapidly changed in 2016. So what were kind of the original concepts and the way that you saw the show going that it really kind of changed in that trajectory November 2016 for you guys?
Do you mind if I use this time to moisturize as well?
Please do.
I was hoping you would.
Okay.
I was wondering why you were rubbing your face. I was like, either he's a hamster or he's praying.
No, it's like 8 a.m. right now. I just need to redress.
Dude, I mean, I mentioned I had to take a shower and people start going through it already.
All right.
Yeah, bro, you want to take this?
I think when we first came into the show, we knew the Daily Show, you knew what it was but, you know, Trevor was very much giving us the freedom creatively to talk about the things that interested us and making sure that figuring out ways to fold those into the show. I can't speak to, you know, how they made the sausage under Jon Stewart, but I've never felt, and even after the transition with the election, I never felt like there was restrictions on the ideas that you wanted to execute. My first 2 pitches for stories were approved immediately. One was police reform and with Jordan Klepper, and then the other one was covering the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. Like, it doesn't get blacker than that. So,
Right.
you know, once we got into the election, it was just more of taking the temperature of the country and finding stories that were a little bit more in alignment with what people were feeling in the world, instead of just enterprising stuff out of the blue. That is still worthwhile, but not quite the breadcrumb trail we needed to be following once Trump started wrecking the bus.
Yeah, and then I was also interested for you guys, Dulcé, Michael, and Jaboukie, because you were jumping in to the show once it was kind of already in flow, and once it found that voice. And what were the ways in which the rest of the correspondent team were really valuable assets to you in helping you just figure out, okay, this is how everything flows, this is how it works? Because you have to learn so many different skills and perform in so many different mediums within each show that you're doing as well.
I think that we were.
Sorry, Jaboukie. Roy was very helpful in showing me, and I'm sure that's what Jaboukie was gonna say. It was if I needed help with a pitch, if I needed help with an idea, because it's like when you start, like even like I've worked at other jobs and you go through a training where it's just like, all right, you know, this is the it's like there's no. I compare it to the running of the bulls in Spain, where it's like you show up and they're just like, all right, you work here, and you just get pushed in. And then you're trying to run, you're trying to stay alive. And then Roy just reaches his hands out, pulls you up on a fence and goes, all right, so here you want to do a pitch. Okay, this is how you do it. You do this, and then you good? You're like, I'm good. You ready? Mm-hmm. And then you're out in the bulls again. So it's a very in-the-moment, on-the-ground learning process. Because even if someone tells you, you know, these things happen, you get an idea of how it works when you get there, but you don't really know until you know. And, you know, the pitching process, because, like, you can pitch something and it gets approved, and I had to learn it's just because something got approved doesn't mean it's going to get made. And it's very advantageous for you to just, you know, pitch whatever your idea is, because Trevor wants to hear what our ideas are. You know, it's not necessarily always what's in the news cycle, because the big things in the news cycle, he's going to talk about that. So what are the things that we looked at that we're affected by and we have ideas for? Because that's how we can make a more well-rounded show, is if us as individual correspondents find the things that are important to us. Like the census piece that I'm doing right now, I pitched it, it got approved, and then it was just going to start as one field piece. But since there was so in-depth and so many things going on with the census, it's going to end up being like a couple different segments that we're going to be able to shoot.
Yeah.
So that's been really good.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, Roy, Desi, Ronny, like, would just bop into my office every once in a while and just, like, be like, I know it's crazy. Is there anything that you need? Like, what's up? And that was, like, super helpful because, like Dulcé said, it really is just like you get thrown into the pool, which is a metaphor that I don't fully understand because I don't know how to swim, but it is difficult.
You would if I threw you into a pool.
Yeah. when you get hired, it's exciting, it's pivotal, it's amazing. But then like 2 a.m. one night, you get a text from Roy, and this is the coolest part. He's got a Word doc of all the 10%, 15% off that you get now because you're a Viacom CBS employee. So I was like, not only am I on the Daily Show, I now get 10% off of 1-800-Flowers?
Doesn't get any better.
Wait, speaking of that, let me go back and find that list.
Roy is the only correspondent that has this information.
He knows everything. Like even on the Zoom, he's the center square. He knows everything. When we went remote, they were like, well, Roy, well, what are you going to need? And Roy was like, listen, I already got a ring light. I got a green screen. I got a crew that's been living in my closet for the past 6 weeks. Like, he already had all this. When I was like, I'm going to have to get, I didn't have a laptop. I used my iPad. And I called Roy to figure out what kind of laptop I should get. Then he sent me, which I didn't even know I needed. What the fuck? Like, he sent me this dongle thing to put all the stuff in. And he was like,
because there's no USB ports, there's no SD card. Yeah, you have to think ahead of these things. Yeah.
We call Roy for everything, like non-work issues, all advice. I texted him last night and I was like, I'm thinking about taking a road trip with my 4-year-old. How do I do this? And he had like literally everything that I should do start to finish and anything that could potentially go wrong.
You need a gas glove. You need a glove in your car that's designated for pumping gas, nothing else. Yeah. There's ways. We can talk about all this stuff.
Well, Roy, one of the things I wanted to actually ask you about a little bit was you originally auditioned for the show. I think it was back in 2008 when Jon Stewart was helming it, and then you came back. Somewhere around then. But I was interested in how the process for auditioning had really shifted and really changed. I know when you came into it this time, it was you write a piece, you perform a piece that the writers have done, and then you come into the studio, which is this great 3-pronged way of really exploring the show, and kind of how that had shifted and what you really learned from going through that process the first time that was valuable to you once you started putting together the pieces when you came onto the show this time around.
The most valuable thing I learned from that first audition, it was whatever year it was the year Wyatt Cenac was hired, because I remember seeing Wyatt in the green room at that audition. I learned that you're also performing when you're listening, not just when you're talking. And I can go back and look at that old audition and realize that, I wasn't present in the moment, even when John was talking back to me. And I go, oh yeah, that was terrible. So to even have a shot at, like, and normally when you pooch an audition for any show, you're not given another chance to come back, especially with a lot of the same producers in the mix. But, at this point, probably 8 or 9 years had passed, and maybe I'd gotten a little better. But I'd say, though, that was probably where I made the mistake. The audition itself was the same. Here's some jokes our writers wrote. Let's see if you do them good. If you do them good, we'll let you do the jokes that you wrote. If you can't do our writers' jokes, we're not interested in your jokes. And that's pretty much what the process was then and saying now.
Great. And then Jaboukie, you also were one of the other people that auditioned for the show twice. And I heard that you were a little hesitant as to whether you actually wanted to go through that process, because it is a lot of work, and whether you really wanted to push forward and go for it again. What was it that ultimately tipped that over and had you jump into the whole process again?
Yeah, because it was like Roy mentioned that you do the writer's jokes, but then you also have to do your own jokes. So you have to watch the news cycle for like a week and then write a piece, which normally if you're doing on the show, you're writing it with like 2 or maybe 3, sometimes even other people. But what ultimately made me decide was that Trevor was like, I'd like to, talk and just like pick your brain for a little bit. And I was like, I'm not going to say no. Like, I can't say no to that. So, we ended up meeting and talking for a while. And I auditioned back to back. I just think the first time I auditioned, it was just like really out there. Like I did a chat where it was all voiceover or something like that. And it was just like very like not in the show's tone or whatever, but I feel like the spirit was there. And then getting to like talk to Trevor and really get a deeper understanding of where he's approaching the show from, I feel like that really something like clicked after talking to him and being like, oh, okay, like now I get it. Now I know how I fit into this whole system and everything. So yeah.
Yeah. And Michael, there was a great thing that you've said where you really feel that, stand congratulations on it. Where you really felt that stand-up comedy allowed you to kind of hone your voice and what your perspective was going to be through your comedy. And then I'm interested how you kind of took what was initially an individual voice and thought about the way that you wanted to shape it in terms of the larger umbrella that is the show and how those two would meld together.
I still haven't achieved 100% success in that. I think as any of us that are stand-ups, you focus your whole life and career on your point of view. And then you walk in a room at the Daily Show and there's 40 Emmys surrounding you of experienced writers, producers. and you realize, I need to listen to these people. These people know what they're doing. I thought I knew what I was doing, but playing at the Giggle Garage in Decatur, Illinois for 18 people is a little different than doing a poignant social commentary on today's news in a studio. So I definitely think it's helped me. I would think the other correspondents as well. I know how to hit a punchline. I know how to deliver a joke because of my stand-up. But, man, there's moving from individual sport to team sport is a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. And when it all works and all the systems are firing, when our show really kicks ass, it's like the best feeling.
Speaking of team sport, do you know the booker for the Giggle Garage? Because I'm really excited to get back to the road after all this. I'm like, I need spots.
You don't get paid, but you get drink tickets, and they got good mozzarella sticks. Ronny's literally laughing at this in his like 4-bedroom suite and overlooking the Sydney Opera House.
And kind of similarly for you, Dulcé, like you've done a lot of stand-up, and I was interested in learning that you actually hadn't originally planned and thought about a career in that space, but it was something where you started doing shows because a friend of yours was running a club back in Atlanta when you were living there. And I was interested in the way that having a space where there really actually weren't high stakes and nothing was really riding on it other than you having a good time and enjoying the evening and having some fun with it and getting to play around, how that was a really valuable time for you in your career, in having a space where you were completely free to try anything and to fail, and how that influenced the way that you still think about your comedy at this point working on the show.
Well, I got into it. A friend of mine worked at a comedy club. I did not know the owner because I think I probably would have gotten on sooner if I knew the owner. And I am not friends with that owner. I got into it because I would go and visit my friend who worked the door, and she would let me in for free. We were friends from school. And I just would go up there all the time, and I got to meet comics, and just from talking to them conversation. One of them, Big Kenny, he was like, you got to start doing stand-up. And I said, no, because I was a theater major and I had no desire to do stand-up. Also, stand-up scared me. So he got my number and then would hit me up for 2 years straight whenever he taught a stand-up class, or, you know, whenever he had a show. He was determined to get me to try stand-up. And I took his class, and I had my graduation in May of 2009, and then he started taking me around, and that's how I got my first gigs. And so it was interesting for me to be good at something that I wasn't interested in doing. And I think sometimes when people talk about people having a natural talent for something, when someone says that to you, you don't take it in because you're just like, oh, you're just being nice. But because I had a theater background, it really helped. And because I had, you know, I've worked in big 100-person cast shows and had to, you know, change work backstage and worked, you know, on stage and done camera work. So when I got to Daily Show, you know, the idea of us all working together made sense for me because I'd worked in an ensemble before. Yeah. I think there's a transformer in the hallway of my building, and he fell down. But yeah, so working together, I think the thing that's the most interesting for me is that comics always come up to me and ask me, so what's it like being a writer on the show? And I'm just like, I'm not in the WGA, I'm in SAG. So I don't know what it's like.
Yeah. Woo!
Ronny!
SAG.
Oh, sorry, SAG.
I think it's SAG-AFTRA. SAG-AFTRA.
Oh, sorry, SAG-AFTRA.
SAG-AFTRA.
We'll workshop it.
WGA is weed.
And he's got the claps. But, you know, so when you come in, because you write your own piece during the audition, you don't know you're not going to have to write your own pieces when you get there. And then you get there and you're like, whew, thank God. Because I don't know how to say all of the things about the politics. I talk about me. But the good part is that I can bring me to the political side of the political view of the show. So it's how the views of the show and the views of what's just going on in general affect me. Because that's what I'm usually talking about. How what's happening in the world affects me and people that look like me. That's what I talk about in my stand-up. That's what I talk about on the show.
Yeah. That's so wonderful. And Desi, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, you'd worked in a myriad of spaces as well, including acting. And there was something that Trevor said when describing the way that you interview people that really struck me, that you're really wonderful at creating a space where people feel comfortable and you kind of allow them to open up more because of that. And I was interested in how your experience, particularly in acting, when you're partnering up with someone in a scene and really having to read the moment and pivot what you're doing constantly, how that was actually a valuable tool once you came into this very different skill set of interviewing people for field pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think I am not a stand-up. I have an improv background, and so I think that has really come in handy and out in the field. And so much of improv is just listening and responding according to what's happening in the moment right in front of you. And we usually buffer. We have a lot of time for these interviews, generally speaking, and you just want the other person to talk. I mean, there's time for jokes, there's room for jokes, but like you really want to keep them talking. So it takes a lot of practice. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing the first time I sat down with someone, but you slowly start to kind of figure out. You go in knowing your 5 things that you want to get from this person, and you may have a couple jokes in your back pocket, and then you just kind of have to be, it's what Rory was talking about. You just kind of have to be present to know when to pounce when the time is right. Yeah, it's my favorite part of the job. But like, these guys are all stand-ups, and the in-studio portion for me has been a real challenge, being in front of the audience and working with the teleprompter. Like, those were things that did not come so naturally, and I'm still working on that. These guys are like pros. It's in their blood. Like, they know exactly what to do in front of an audience and how to ride that out. That's like something I'm still working on.
Yeah. And then Ronny, one of the things that I was curious about for you, kind of coming from a lot more of a stand-up comedy background, obviously you weren't pursuing a specific career in political satire and political commentary. So how did you kind of navigate realizing that was a space that you were going to end up in working on the show, and figuring out what your voice and what your perspective was going to be in that particular realm?
Yeah, I didn't, I kind of avoided politics when I was doing stand-up comedy because I felt like I wasn't smart enough or had any authority to talk about it. So I just kind of like avoided it a lot of time. But I always followed it. Like, even though I wasn't living in America, I was always watching The West Wing. I was always listening to Meet the Press. And so like it wasn't an alien industry, for lack of a better term, to me at all. Like, I knew all the players. I knew kind of like watched a lot of Jon Stewart and Colbert. But I just never thought I would be able to work in that space at all. So when I got hired on the show, it was like, oh my God, I actually get to play in this space. And then, like Kosta said, you're kind of surrounded by people who've been living, breathing, eating, making this for like 20 years now, so you can't help but, just by being around these people who are really good at their jobs, talking about American satire. I mean, these guys pioneered modern American satire, and you're surrounded by them every single day. It can't help but rub off on you. That style, the topics they talk about, the way they talk about it. And then it slowly kind of made its way into my stand-up. So the stuff that I wanted to talk about started getting more political, and I think to answer your question about how it affected my voice, one of the big questions they always ask at The Daily Show when we're writing anything is, what are you trying to say? Like, what are you trying to say with this joke? And that's kind of like a question which I started asking myself when I was, whether I'm writing stuff for a Daily Show or for myself. It's like, this is a funny joke, but what are you trying to say with it? And that really kind of like hones your voice a lot. Like, what exactly are you trying to say with this particular joke or this statement that you're making?
Yeah, and
Ronny, just tell the truth, Ronny. Just say you want to destroy America. You literally named your special. Asian comedian destroys America, and that's what you're out to do on The Daily Show, is destroy America.
We're on to you.
I will do whatever it takes to make money in America. Okay, whether that means destroying it or creating it. Okay, that's my end goal.
Just know I'm an ally to your cause, Ronny. This country don't like me no way. But whatever you're trying to do, please know I'll be right next to you, taking names down. Mr. Chieng will see you now. I'm just here to help you.
Well, there must be such an interesting thing in the lens that you all come at the news with at this point from being in the show for so long. And I think Roy, you're the one that's mentioned in the past how, particularly with field pieces, you always really start paying attention to local news for whatever space it is you're going to. And so I was curious about the way that it's really broadened up the different spaces that you look to for news. And when you're sitting in those pitch meetings and coming up with ideas, there's just such a breadth and such a wealth of news. How do you make it manageable and digestible to figure out what it is that you're all going to bring into the room that day?
You bring it all. And I think that's the beauty of even now being remote, that we're able to still have field meetings and have crosstalk. The thing that I think is easier now where the field department is concerned is that so much of what's happening in America is a shared experience nationally. Everybody's dealing with COVID in some form of fallout. Everyone's dealing with the need for police reform in some form of fallout. Everyone's dealing with race relations in some form. So there's no story that you can pitch locally that doesn't connect to the greater piece of the puzzle that Trevor connects to. I mean, like, this is probably, I think Dulcé, I can't remember what the piece was, but, we were set to go out. Well, Dulcé was set to go out and speak with Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. And it just so happened at the same time, something nationally happened that connected to Atlanta. And Keisha ended up on the show. And that's not a normal occurrence for the type of people that we talk to in the field. But, I think in that regard, there's a lot of overlap now. So it makes pitching stories that connect to the bigger puzzle a lot easier now, because the whole country is sick and angry and scared. And it's made my job a lot easier.
We just look at this Zoom call. We've got everybody looks different and is different. So even by introducing a topic that you think is interesting, you'll get 5 different opinions and points of view in the meeting. And that is something that is tremendous, and that, ready for it, guys, not all the other shows have.
Yeah, I think we are the most diverse lineup in American late night.
Just don't think we are. It's statistical facts. It's not hating. We are the most diverse.
I mean, and just for case in fact, we had a field meeting a couple weeks ago, and because me and Roy are from the South, I was like, there's a black NASCAR driver, and he's got a Black Lives Matter car. And I can feel everybody go, why does she know about NASCAR? And it's like, because I'm Southern. Paying attention.
Yeah.
And if black people are doing anything first, I want to be there for that new Black History Fact, okay? And NASCAR was like, we're so sorry. And I'm like, no one was thinking that NASCAR was going to apologize. No one was looking at them, and they were just like, you know what, we're wrong. We're going to say we're sorry. And America was like, oh, okay, girl, we see you. And everybody was real confused. But that's just because what'd you say, Ronny?
Oh, no, sorry. I wasn't trying to.
But it's going back to Kosta saying, because we all have different experiences and we're all from different parts of the country. Because Desi's also from the South, she's from Kentucky. Kosta's saying he's from Michigan. That's how you
That's the city I'm from in Michigan.
Thumb. What's it? Thumb? What is it?
Oh, now you're going towards like Youngstown, Ohio. I'm from Ann Arbor. What up?
The hand.
Oh my God. At least I recognized it. I understood the point what Kosta was trying to make. We get each other. Me and Kosta are best friends. People don't know that. Me and Kosta is buddies. I'm the godmother to his daughter.
That's right.
Okay. All right,
I thought I was the godmother to your daughter.
You know what? We still have some things to figure out. How much time do we have left?
Because I'm pretty sure you told me that it's mine.
Me and Desi gonna talk about this.
Wow, we got some stuff to work out.
Yeah, let's talk about that off air. Yeah, let's talk about that later.
Well, kind of going back to the field pieces a little bit, when you're setting up and you're going somewhere, particularly when you're traveling somewhere that's a little bit more remote, and you're working with people that aren't, in the entertainment industry and aren't used to being on camera, what does that process look like in the way that you're working with people that you're going to interview? Are you spending time with them before it's on camera to kind of suss out and learn their personality a little bit? Or does that whole discovery process really happen with the cameras rolling?
I know everybody's got a different answer on this one. I'm going to let somebody else answer first.
I wondered about this because
we're not all the same. I already can tell you that right now.
I have heard a lot of correspondents say, and previous correspondents say, I will not speak to the subject until I come in. I want to surprise them. I don't want to disarm them. I want to just go right into it. my approach has always been to sit down and speak with them as myself. But I will tell you, on my very first field piece, when I did that and I was sitting with someone who had a point of view that was the opposing point of view, and I was speaking to him as myself. And then when we got into the interview and I started throwing out jokes, he was really taken aback, and he was like, what are you doing? Are you playing a character? This person is not the person who I was just seeing. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe they have a point. Maybe you should not speak to them before the interview. What do you guys do?
I actually kind of like unnerving people like that. And I feel like a lot of I can really only think of one person I spoke to in a field piece that was like 100% an op. I think a lot of my field pieces, I'm talking to people who are like kind of on the same side at the very least, or like 100% I agree with them. So and because I'm playing an idiot, I like to establish like, hey, look, like you're great. This is great. This is what I need you to do. And then just like completely shift into it, and then do not break from it until the end. And then like let them down, like, hey, thanks again. That was so great. I really appreciate it. After I've just been like walking down a hallway in nothing but my underwear with them. Like, you know, like I fully act like as if it's perfectly normal. Just like, hey, so thanks for doing this. We're going to do some stuff. It's going to be great. And then just start throwing stuff at them. Once you get that, once you're on the same page, just being like, okay, I see you. And then just like slowly trying to get a reaction out of them. I don't know. It's fun. I kind of just like trolling though. So I think that's probably where that comes from.
And is the process when you're interviewing politicians any different as well? Because they're so adept and they're so trained to really bring every question back to a specific message and a specific point of view. You know, they're there with such a specific agenda when they're coming onto the show and being interviewed. So what's the difference in the way that you approach those interviews and set those ones up?
Yeah, I mean, those like people, first of all, I mean, no one's coming on the show saying something that they don't want to say. So it's not, we're not like making people say something that is completely out of their wheelhouse. They willingly come on and they are expressing the point of view that they want to express. And we're not like asking a question and then editing a different answer into it. Like it's them basically.
Right.
And so, you know, that is, there's no trick there at all. There's no, manipulation there. And second of all, a lot of the interviews, whether these guys are professional speakers or not, a lot of it comes in the prep work. You know, there's a lot of support staff, there's a lot of producers working behind the scenes to kind of prepare for the interview, and we prepare for the interview beforehand. So to answer your question, basically it involves a lot of pre-interview prep work. So you know exactly what you're doing in the piece, you know, where you want to go with it, what questions you want to ask them, and you like a pre-interview with them as well that doesn't involve the correspondence, where you kind of know what they're going to say anyway. So it's all preparation basically.
And if you're going to get go ahead, Desi.
No, I was just going to say with some of the politicians, I think the key that I've found is just efficiency, just speed and efficiency. Because you probably, with those interviews, you might get 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. So you kind of, the field producer and I are usually right before going through. I mean, like, we don't need that one. We don't need this one. Let's just get these 5 and go. Mm-hmm. That's what I found.
Yeah, because it's like, even if the politician is going to brick wall you on a particular thing or not say a particular thing, then the joke becomes their refusal to bend on that. I interviewed Bill Weld, who at the time was running for the Republican nomination against Trump this year. And we were trying to get Weld to endorse Joe Biden, and Weld would not do it. He was still pro-Republican. So that becomes the game. The game is your non-cooperation is still an element to an interview. And that's still, back to Ronnie's point, it's the truth. It's what they said or wouldn't say at the time. So you just find ways to maneuver around it.
Mm-hmm.
My spin room piece after the debate, we knew that they wouldn't even talk to me. So the piece became my question yelling at the back of them as they ran away from me. That was great. We knew they wouldn't talk. So I'll just yell out jokes.
And kind of jumping back a little bit to what we were talking about at the beginning with the way that everything has shifted with working remotely and filming the show in a very different way, kind of as you reflect on these last 3 months of making the show, what are the differences that you hope you really keep when you go back to working together in the studio and back to in person? And are there certain things from how you worked together before the shutdown that you kind of hope you actually don't go back to in the same way and you think about that differently?
I think, all right, listen, I am looking forward to maybe, some days are super, super busy. Some days are not. And I hope on those days that are not, that I can just stay at my house.
I have been loving getting to do chats and sketches together, all the correspondence together. We've been doing a lot more of that than we used to. And I hope that carries over when we're back into the studio. And I think there's also kind of like a looseness to what we're doing now because there's so many uncontrollable variables happening. Some of us have kids running in and out of the shot and dogs and stuff's going on and we're in our t-shirts and, you know, there's like a looseness to it all that's kind of fun, I think, creatively. And I hope that some of that carries over too.
The MTA announced, you know, because of COVID that they're sanitizing the subways every day now. And I was like, what were you doing before?
Nothing.
I mean, why is that a new development? So what I'm hoping we move forward is strictly sanitation, both in the city and the office and amongst my peers.
So don't touch you? Is that what you're saying?
No more dirty touching.
Got it.
Clean touching.
I am just really thankful. Every day I would walk into the office and Desi would sneeze on me. And it started, I was like, oh, I'm just being hazed. It's like a funny Daily Show inside joke, but it didn't stop. And every day I would just come in, boom, right in my face. So I'm hoping that maybe we could stop that tradition.
I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying it. Sorry, Ronny, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that before this happened, I really appreciated how SAG-AFTRA looked after all our kind of needs and interests. And I love how they continue to do so even in this post-pandemic period over Zoom. And I hope that continues.
Is there a better due to pay when that bill comes? Oh, I love
that.
It's just so great.
Dude, sometimes you don't even need to pay it. They just take it. Yeah.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Dude, it's so convenient. Yeah.
Are we talking about dues?
Well, thank you so much for all taking.
On that note,
I would love to chat to you guys all day, but I know that you have to jump into other things. And thank you so much for taking time out today. And we'll be sure to send you all the bills for your dues tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
bye. Thank you.